Hello, I'm Catherine Brown Ramsperger, author of the award-winning The Shores of Our Souls. You can call me Kathy. Happy holidays and welcome to my story hour. I created Story Hour to connect avid readers with brilliant writers, and you're probably one or both. And so you've come to the right place. Welcome both readers and writers. And today we're going to welcome Robert Babirad, who has written a book called In Transit Passenger. So his memoir asks the question, if you left behind what was familiar, where might that lead? And he does so. In Transit Passenger, the protagonist leaves behind an unfulfilling life at a law office in order to find greater meaning and a more significant life. A seemingly routine trip by boat suddenly turns into something much more, taking him back in time to those in-transit moments of the past, and in turn to a truer and a more authentic self. Can a simple trip change you by becoming so much more? I would certainly say a resounding yes, but I will be asking Robert this question, and there's more in the book about how. It should be published sometime in early 2021. Boy, I'm still in 2020, 2021. It's right there upon us. Yay. No more masks. And a little bit about Robert. He holds a master's in European Union law from King's College London, awarded with merit, a Juris Doctorate, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and secondary English education. And both were awarded magna cum laude. He has written for numerous international peer-reviewed financial, legal, and educational publications, as well as New York Newsday. He's passionate about travel, obviously, history, culture, reading, languages, and the arts. And I might add, a member of a very creative, very prolific family of writers. Welcome, Robert. So nice to have you here.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I am pleased to be able to talk to a fellow traveler.
Oh, thank you.
A fellow writer.
Thank you.
So I think we can launch straight into the questions. We'll take a couple breaks for the audience. I'll start with asking about that question. Can a simple trip become so much more? And can it change your life?
I think it definitely can, because any trip has the ability to change it. You get exposed to these new cultures, different people, different backgrounds, and it changes the way that you look at your own life, the way you look at the world as a whole. And I think it just gives you so much of a broader perspective. I think it's an invaluable thing when you make that journey, when you expose yourself to a new world. I think it's life-changing. I really do.
So how is a big trip, say to Budapest, in that beautiful photograph behind you? Let us see the whole thing.
Thank you.
How is that different from a simple ferry ride across the Hudson?
You know, when I did the ferry ride and I was coming back to New York State, it was, I like to joke that it was like when Queen Elizabeth, when Windsor was burning years ago, and she called it her annus horribilis, horribilis, I think. Her horrible year.
I say and, it times fast.
And it's horribilis, I think. But, that was what the ferry ride was. I was coming back after this very dark time. And, I was like, even Marcel Proust, I've been corrected. I thought it was Proust for a long time. I've been corrected. When they bite into the Madeline cookie in the beginning of In Remembrance of Things Past. And then it leads to this going back in time to all these memories of the past and how that affected the main character. And that's what the ferry ride was. And then that led me on to Budapest and everything else. It was this journey back to, there's something more to life. There's more out there. And it doesn't have to be this annus horribilis, it can be better. Windsor doesn't have to be burning behind. Things can get better. So that's
a beautiful explanation.
Thank you.
And it doesn't have to be elaborate either. It can be those moments of being in someplace different. Absolutely. Figurative or literal, right?
Absolutely.
Get out of the horrible fire, literally, but other times it's just a change in perspective. So, and you do that really well. You describe that well in the first chapter. It might even be the first 2 chapters.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, you graduated from your undergraduate college with a job as a high school English teacher. And I'm wondering how you ended up going back to school for law, and then how that led to the travels. I think we all want to know that.
Okay, of course. It's a strange journey. Well, what happened was I always wanted to do something international. I went to law school not because I ever wanted to be a lawyer, because I really didn't. I wanted to do something like in the diplomatic field or something that would put me overseas and working with different people from different countries. I never wanted to be a lawyer. But apparently it's like Hollywood. You get typecast. If you go down this route, you're doomed. No, I shouldn't say you're stuck in this role of lawyer.
I've in it myself. I get it.
Okay, thank you.
Not law, but I worked with a lot of lawyers.
Well,
but the humanitarian field, you get typecast. Absolutely. I was the communicator. That was me. It was a great job. I'm not.
Yeah.
To get it
no,
all,
but I know what you meant.
They would never have said go out and to a feeding station and help people by serving them food, right?
Right.
I had to take pictures and write stories. So it's a very typecast kind of thing. I get it.
No, exactly. And that's exactly what happened. So I go into law school and I think, okay, this is going to lead to this international background. And it just led to this parade of horribles after when I got deeper and deeper into the field. And, I finished the bar exam and actually started. And that's kind of where the story begins, with this horrible experience in a law firm. And, I went back and I said, I love traveling. I love working with people from all over the world. I don't want to be living this nightmare, going to court every day and this horrible world. Anyway, if there's any lawyers listening to it, they probably shouldn't read this book.
There probably are, and some of them may have become writers. But the thing is, there would have been somebody who would have loved every minute of it, And it's about finding I know that this is an overused term, but finding your bliss, right? And a lot of times school doesn't prep us for that. We think we have to have this to do this. And maybe we do, right? And maybe we need it for the first little bit, and then we do something different.
That's so true. It's true. And I love, even with the European law, I loved writing the academic articles and doing the research and all of that. But I have friends that, this one friend in particular, I'm thinking, she is a great lawyer. She should be a lawyer. I should not be a lawyer. I have no business being near what goes on every day. It's not my personality. I can't, but I'm sorry. That's.
See, I love though that you saw that and you saw it early in life and you were able to turn it around and do something else. That's fantastic. So many people are Walter Mitty's. Walter Mitty?
I love that. I love that reference. Absolutely.
Yeah, they just keep going because, I have to keep doing this. You don't have to keep doing anything.
Yeah.
All right. So, this is something that I think I know, but I want to ask anyway. Why do you include the questions for the reader at the end of each chapter? And they're related to the chapter.
I wanted to make it a personal journey for the reader. I didn't want nobody. What was that quote? There's a quotation about, like the sweetest sound in the language is somebody's own name. People don't want to necessarily, read about, oh, this person went here or there, and it's nice. But I didn't want it to be a travel book, just a travel book. I wanted, because I was having all these experiences, meeting all these people and learning all these different things. And so I put the questions in because I wanted it to be a personal journey for each reader in their own way. And that they're going on their own journey and they're seeing what I did, but it's not about me. It's about how are they going to relate to this experience, or to what I saw, what I learned. And then what do you think? How does this relate to your own journey?
Okay, thank you. And I just want people to know that as they go along. I think they'll become more invested in it. And by the way, everyone, I think you can get a lot out of this book, reading it in small bits and then taking time to ponder the questions. And you can also do it if you haven't left your hometown, I think. I would probably be buying it for that reason alone, because I have this travel bug in me. And I know it was the perfect manuscript to read during COVID, because I feel so stuck. My husband's high risk, and so I'm stuck inside too. So really, literally, I don't mean like all the time, but the grocery store is a big deal these days.
Yeah, exactly. For all of us right now.
So, so what's your favorite place you traveled and why? Because you've traveled to a lot of different places all over the world. And can you just fill us in on the chronology of it a little? Was some of it when you were getting your bachelor's? Did you take some time off and go around the world? I was a little uncertain about when it all happened.
Sure, of course. The ball really started rolling when I was finishing college, and I had this opportunity to go over to Oxford, and it came out of nowhere actually, because it was the same tuition as paying as a New York in-state resident. It was the same price as going for my undergraduate here, because it was through, it was sponsored by New York State School. And that really started the ball rolling. And this other person who I went to school with said, we should go do this, and we're going to go over to Oxford and everything. And then they dropped out. So then I'm standing at Kennedy Airport with a bunch of strangers from this school up near the Canadian border who I'd never met before. And, we're going to be spending over a summer together. And, we're meeting each other for the first time at Kennedy Airport. And that kind of just like set the ball rolling at that point. And then from there on, the other things would take place. Like in 2010, I went to Hungary. And prior to that, I was going into Manhattan, applying for citizenship. My father was originally from there, so it was this going back over there. When it was 2010, but it was after 2008 when everything started in the United States, and things were getting worse and worse. And that led me to this whole citizenship route and going over there, and the languages with that. And then from there, I would go to France, go to Italy, North Africa, and it went on from that point pretty much. But yeah, I'd say this.
What was your favorite? What was your favorite? Did you have a favorite?
I can't.
Are they like books? It's hard to have a favorite.
Yeah, it's just like books. Like I love to read, so I can't. People ask that all the time. What's your favorite book? And I can't say that. Because I read so much. There's no way I could say one book is a favorite. And it's the same with travel. Every place was so unique and so different. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be in the West Indies on an island, meeting all these people and having these experiences. And it was great to be in North Africa. You're wandering through the Medina and you're seeing all this culture. But Oxford was unique just because I was very young and that experience couldn't come in. I mean, I shouldn't say that it couldn't come again, but it was a moment in time. It couldn't be replicated. And it was the gateway to this. And to spend a summer at, in this old city at an actual school, it was incredible. So that was, I'd say, a lot of ways very unique, and it started things going.
Okay. Cool. I feel like I know you filled us in on the backstory a little, and it's helping.
Thanks.
And maybe Kaylee can say yay or nay to that. I think that backstory helped a lot. I think we're ready for audience questions now too.
Yes, we have a couple questions, and we also have some greetings as well. So we have some greetings from Paraguay, actually, from, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced this name, but Darius Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And Oscar. So they're saying hello, and it's good to see you. So that's
those are my very good friends from Paraguay, Darius and Oscar. I'm so happy to have them here today.
Yeah, that's really neat. It's really neat to have an international audience. That's amazing.
Welcome.
Yes. And then we have a couple questions as well. So we have a question from Tatiana Ramsoff, and you sort of touched on studying in the UK, but she was wondering why you decided to study in the UK, because I know you got your master's at King's College London, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So if you want to expand on that, that would be great.
They have very good reciprocal arrangements with the United States that you can go over there and study. It's obviously with the language issues, even though you may speak other languages, to have the level of fluency to do a degree program, it's a big convenience, obviously, to have a program all in English, to be able to do it. So that was a big factor. And I always loved and you can have this at other schools, other countries, anywhere in Europe, obviously, but I love these old universities. That environment is it's so different from, and I talk about that in Transit Passenger. I was going to a school that was built in the late 60s, early 70s here in New York. Mm-hmm. And then you go to Oxford and it's like Hogwarts, it's like you're in, J.K. Rowling.
I blurted it out, but
yeah, I know. I
said it.
Exactly. And it's this like mystical world, and you're seeing this, you're doing this for the first time. So you're there with these old buildings and paintings and the medieval dining hall every night. And it's so different from what you grow up and what you're used to. And so that was the big factor that led to the UK. And of course, the language, even though I'm learning the Hungarian, I couldn't do a degree in Hungarian at this point. And so that's, it would be an impossibility. So that was a big factor. I think the Netherlands are very good too. I've heard a lot of Americans going to the Netherlands.
Yeah. I went to Arizona State University, kind of built around most of the buildings now kind of in the 60s and 70s. So I get that. It doesn't have that same sort of academic feeling. So I completely understand that. And when I read that part, I was like, I want to go to Oxford.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, you wrote it so beautifully. So thank you for that. And we have a question from your sister, Christy Lee.
Oh, Christy Lee. Okay.
Yes, Christy Lee. So she asks, what led you to leave teaching? What led you to leaving teaching? Can you please tell us more about your experience in today's classroom?
Oh, that's a loaded question. That's a good one. Well, I was very disappointed in a lot of ways, because there's kids that really want to learn. And I wanted to help those kids. I love teaching. But that's not what I saw going on in the classroom today. It was too much of every fad that comes along, these the administrators or whatever in the school district want to jump on every single fad to make a name for themselves or for the district, whatever. And, you know, you have kids, and then, you know, of course, everything is highly politicized in a sense, the curriculum. So kids don't really have a choice in what they want to read or what they want to study. Like there would actually something that's going to interest them, because there has to be that interest. I love reading. And I think a lot more people would love reading if they had the opportunity to explore all the books out there and to not be limited to, you're going to be forced to read this, that, and the other thing, because this is what the state is mandating.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, there was, I made a joke the other day. I said, you know, you'd walk into the classroom and you didn't know if you were the prison warden today, if you were auditioning for Cirque du Soleil, or if you were an English teacher. You know, what's, and then you'd have these kids that really wanted to learn, and you really want to help, and that's who you're there. You're there to help. You're there to help these kids. But you've got all these other competing interests. And I feel, this is a bone of contention, but I just feel they talk all this 21st century, you know, next generation learning standards, and they talk, you know, rigorous instruction, all this. And I feel, and it wasn't any golden age when I was in high school, it's just getting, the standards have gone down in a lot of ways, I feel, in the public school system, even though they're preaching all this rigorous instruction and all this stuff. And the kids aren't getting that love of learning that they should be there and should be having the opportunity to develop. So it's sad. It's sad. But that was my experience in the public school classroom. So, and then that led to everything else.
Yeah, there's systemic issues for sure within education, and I at one point was thinking about becoming a teacher, so that resonates with me a lot, because it's sad to see. You want, I mean, and as a student, I mean, we can understand that sort of cynicism that comes in, like, why do I have to learn this when it's not going to benefit me down the road? They don't see how it could benefit down the road. So it's a hard job. It's a hard job to go into. So I don't blame you.
Oh, thank you. I feel better hearing that. And, you know, I just like, even like my friends in Paraguay that are in the room, even, like, oh my gosh, their knowledge of the foreign languages and everything is phenomenal. And, you know, that's, I think, one of the big flaws in the U.S. education system. They're not promoting this, helping the kids really learn and it's not just about languages. That's only one portion. It's so much bigger than that.
Wow.
Anyway.
So I think this could be a whole nother show, because I agree with 98% of what you said, not having been a teacher myself, but coming from a family of teachers and deciding, even though I'm much older than you, not to teach, because I could see that the public school system, even by the time I was in middle school, was not what my mother had experienced as a teacher. And every generation it's gotten a little bit more constricted, and learning doesn't happen in a constricted environment at all.
I love
and so I totally get it, and I know what hardship teachers have to go through on a normal day, let alone during this year. So any more, Kaylee?
Yes, actually, we have quite a few more questions. So I'll probably ask just one more, and then we can move on to the rest of the questions. We also have a greeting from Shanessa. She says, hi, Rob and Kathy.
Shanessa.
Yes, she said it's a very interesting chat, and she's looking forward to reading the book. And we have a question from Noelle Puglisi, and she asks, did you pretty much know a little bit about each place you went to, or did you go in raw?
Well, you know, I didn't know what I was getting into with any place. So, I mean, Oxford was blind. I went in blindly. Hungary, I went in very blindly. But then, you know, when you're traveling and you're talking to people, and then you actually read up on what you're seeing and what you're doing, like, you know, it makes the experience so much more. So I went in raw to these places, in a sense. North Africa too. And it was actually a terrible thing. North Africa, the Bardo Museum, where I was, couple of years after that, everyone was killed exactly where I was. There was a terrorist attack, and they must have killed every single person exactly where I was. And I mean, you know, it's all such a learning experience. I didn't need to really bring that up, but it's just, I went in raw, but then I learned. You talk with all these people, you read about it, and you're like, okay, so this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing.
No, it must have been surreal, especially after being there. I can't imagine.
Can't imagine the situation. What must have gone on when that happened.
Can you imagine if our children had lessons like that? I don't mean that they needed to be witness to war or terrorism or anything like that, but there's got to be a way to make the learning in school more visceral, more tactile.
Absolutely.
So, and speaking of that, when you write about being in North Africa, you said our journeys and the places we go contain culture and art if looked at. How would you encourage people in general, or your readers in particular, to look for these things in everyday life?
Yeah, I love that question, because it's
it was
not
Kaylee's.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was Kaylee's. I love it. That's such a great question, Kaylee. I really love it, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm trying to do it in my everyday life, so it was almost in vain that I asked, but
no,
I figured.
I loved it. I saw that question. I said, that's fantastic. It's so good. No, well, you know, the thing is, art is everywhere. Like, I mean, the way a person dresses, the way a person, our iPhones and iPods, you think about Steve Jobs with his interest in the Japanese aesthetics. And he was trying to incorporate that in, you know, the iPhone, the design. And that's art. And I love even, I really like Julia Cameron. I like her books, The Artist's Way. And, my favorite one by her, though, is I like The Sound of Paper. That's the other one. Anyway, doesn't matter. Finding Water. She's got a lot of great books, but she talks about replenishing your creative well and like just going out, going for a walk, and you know, you're taking in these things to enrich yourself creatively. Because we, you know, she talks about, you know, making ourselves richer by, you know, taking in these experiences. And that's what I feel like there's art around us every day. You see a beautiful building, you see the way, you know, like we have a Jack Russell Terrier, you see the way he's playing, this enthusiasm for life, that's a form of art. The iPhone, paper that, you know, I know recently I bought these beautiful Christmas cards from over in London. They're handmade, they're beautiful. There's an art to it. And every time I read in that paper, there's a level of quality, the attention to detail, time is put into this. And I think there's art everywhere around. About traveling somewhere, I mean, that's great and all, but there's art in our everyday lives, the way you just, and that's why I love the guy even in the book with the espresso story, where he's saying this is not espresso, this random guy in the airport who sends back, just comes up to me. I'm sorry.
I love that story too, because it reminds me of a story of my own. And it was on the train from Budapest to Prague.
Okay.
And remember, one of us was pretty sick, and I was getting sick. And I have to have coffee every morning.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think the biggest argument of my marriage, and I've been married 30 some years, was on that train, because I paid $10 for a cup of coffee.
Great.
And so this was in 1991.
Oh, like, my gosh.
Yeah. He was not happy with me, but I'm sick and I'm going to fall asleep. And it was not espresso.
Oh my gosh. It wasn't espresso. No, definitely not.
Not Starbucks. No.
No. I love that. You know, this guy just coming up to me and sending my coffee back. I've never met this person in my life. He's pushing his coffee back and he's telling me this is not espresso. So, yeah. And then I meet a lady later on and she's saying, and I want it from a fresh pot. And I was like, this all works together.
Coffee connoisseurs unite.
Exactly.
So So moving on from North Africa to a Florida swamp, and
Yes.
from there to the Riviera, and from there to the souks of Medina. What's different about them, and what, I think maybe you've already touched on what's different about them, but what's similar about them? What is there a common thread in your travels about the places you visited?
I'd say the one thing about all of those places that are seemingly unrelated, totally unrelated, but they all pushed me outside of comfort zone. I had to learn something. I had to learn how to move this kayak through this swamp in Florida. In North Africa, this was way outside my comfort zone. To be wandering in Sidi Bou Said and in Medina, in Tunisia, and every single one of them, they're similar because they were all outside the comfort zone. Even going out to Kansas, even when I went to Oxford, I didn't necessarily want to do it initially. There was a lot of doubt and all of that, but it pushed me outside of what was familiar. And so that's the common thread, I think, that runs through every single experience.
And didn't you feel comfortable within a short amount of time? Not every day. There are
Yes.
always those days where you feel like a complete outsider. But it's amazing how we adapt as humans, isn't it?
It is. I love that
just
statement.
about any place. Yeah.
We really do. We think, this is going to be so different from what I'm used to. And then when you're there for a while, that's why even in the book, when I talk about coming back to the United States after England, and even after Hungary, coming back, it was a culture shock because you adapt very quickly to a new lifestyle. It's just that initial shock in the beginning. It's pulling the cord, to say I'm going to go do this, and that's the brutal part. That's the worst stuff. And I'm still struggling with it right now.
Well, my son was supposed to go to China to teach in March of 2020. And he had signed the contract and everything, gotten the school he wanted, and COVID. So I hope he pulls the ripcord the second time.
I hope so.
Know what it'll give him. Yeah. But it's tough. It really is like jumping off a plane, isn't it? That same kind of in your belly feeling the first time you go to a place that's so unfamiliar. Yeah. So, how can needing to speak another language or just the basic sign language of travel transform your worldview, and for that matter, your everyday worldview? Not just when you're in Medina, but when you are in New York.
I love that question. I mean, the languages are so important. Because when you immerse yourself in learning another language, all of a sudden your world gets so much richer. You're watching videos, movies, you're reading books in a different culture, there's a different history behind that language. It makes your own life so much richer when you walk down that road. You say, okay, I'm going to learn French, I'm going to learn Spanish, I'm going to learn Hungarian, whatever. And all of a sudden, this new culture opens up to you. Oscar Villoro even, and Darlis in the room here, that's how I met them. It was through the language learning. That's how that's how that even developed. And it opens up so many, it makes your own life so much richer. And it's, all these new cultures, all these new experiences. Every language has a different way of looking at the world. With Hungarian, you go from an English goodbye to Viszont látásra. There's something that happened between those two words. There's a huge history behind what underlies each expression. It's incredible. So I'm a big fan of it. And I think it's sad, like from the teaching perspective, again, in public schools, that it's not encouraged enough. And then even in a place like New York, Washington, anywhere, you have people from all over the world, and how much richer your life becomes when you can communicate with all these different people, different backgrounds. It makes your life so much more interesting and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I and that the language sort of informs the culture and the culture informs the language. It's so beautiful. Thank you for that gorgeous explanation of it. You did a really good job explaining it. And it's been my experience too, both here at home and and in my travels. So uh what passport question, given your passport to your book in transit, would you like to leave the audience to ponder or answer uh, in the comments if there was just one from your travels?
I would say, given this whole COVID situation right now, what's one thing? What's one fixed point? I talk in the book about fixed points. You know, these things, these anchors in your life that you're drawn back to guide you. So what's one fixed point or thing that you've learned during this COVID period that you want to apply to your future journey, to the journeys ahead in your life? So what is one fixed point that you've derived from this COVID time period in your own life that you want to use to impact your journey ahead? So it could be you want to spend more time with family. You've been realizing that needs to be more important in your life. So maybe you want to incorporate that in the future. Or maybe you've said, you realize that you want to visit a certain place or do a certain thing in your life. You realize that during this time. Maybe that's something that you want to apply to the journey ahead, your own path. Mm-hmm. I think we've all learned a lot during this time period. And I think we've all derived certain lessons that we can say, you know what, going forward, I want to apply that. I want to change my life in some way. That's probably the passport question I would ask people.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Everybody, we'd love to know. We'd love to know your answer. I think we could write a book about that just from the responses, what we learned from COVID and how we would change our life going forward. That's beautiful. Thank you, Robert. So what is next? I know your book's going to come out and we're in that, like the waiting stage. I've been myself. And then the next step, will you write another? What's the next story for Robert?
I'm working right now. I have this outline that I'm working on. I'm researching. I'm gathering. I want to write this historical fiction novel about in Colombia, where I loved Colombia. I had a great time there, and I don't want to give the idea away on the internet, but
you have to just say Colombia.
Yeah, it's a historical fiction in Colombia, and of course, I want to, just like every author has their main character, whatever, that seems to follow in a series. I want to have another main character who's leaving the law firm. so I want to have another disillusioned main character, basically, who's leaving the law and set it in Colombia.
That's like a pattern.
Yeah, that's going to be my pattern.
Conflict, right?
Right.
Conflict, and it sounds like conflict. It sounds like a great. Colombia is a place I've never been, but I worked with a woman from Bogota on the AIDS initiative in the late 80s, early 90s. And she just would just go on and on about Colombia. So I want to go everywhere. So
I feel the same.
If there was one lesson you'd like to impart to others from your travels, what would that be?
I would say keep going, keep exploring. It's easier said than done, but stay mindful and don't get stuck in a rut. And I think it happens to all of us. It's so easy to just get acclimated to a certain situation, daily routine. And I'd say keep going, just keep going, keep exploring, stay mindful, and take it in. I mean, there's so much when you travel or when you go anywhere in life. There's so much to be taken in if you really look for it. I'm working on it, obviously, and
Oh, aren't
It's a
we
long journey.
all? Especially right now. But that's beautiful. And anybody that watches this show regularly knows my dad called me the little train that could. And so, you know, I resonate with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn things around just slightly and show my my tea bag wisdom. And nobody can ever read it. If your eyes are better than mine, you might be able to. But I show people just to show them that it's real. And this one says, happiness is an accomplishment, Robert. These things, I could get them if I tried. If I wrote them down, it would not be the same.
There's truth to it.
Truth about your life too. So thank you. Kaylee, more questions from the audience?
Yes. So we have a question from Marie Bourguignon, and she asks, did you travel alone most of the time?
It was mixed. I mean, there was a lot of time that I was alone. Other times I was with my sister. Other times I was with friends. It varied a lot. I mean, for example, like the chapter about Stonehenge, when I went out there was this disagreement when I was at Oxford, and everyone said, we're going to go shopping. We're going to go to Bath, the old city of Bath in England. And we're going to go and we're going to have a shopping day. And I said, I didn't come to England. I'm not going to go shopping. I didn't come to England to just go shopping. I said, I got to take this in while I'm over here. So I went on the train alone. I found this, the station, the route, how to get there. And I went out to Stonehenge by myself. And that's even where I talk about the story with the lady I met from Guyana. She was so interesting because she said to me, I don't even know how we got this conversation, but she said how someday you're going to be on a train like this on the day of your death, traveling with all these other people from different backgrounds. And it's going to be just like this train going back to Oxford. This random conversation happens on this train. And that was a journey I went on alone. So I'm sorry, that was long-winded.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Not at all. And we have another question from Noelle Puglisi, and she's asking, where would you highly recommend someone to go if they could only go to one place?
That's a very tough question. I don't think there's a right answer to that or a definitive answer. I mean, as I'm getting older, I really like the warm climate, So I mean, I'm definitely leaning to Mediterranean and, South America and those kind of ports at this point in my life. I mean, the cold is a lot to deal with, but I don't think there's one particular place. I think there's so many beautiful places in the world. And that argument doesn't even work what I just said, because we think about all these beautiful Nordic countries that I still want to see. You can't just write them off. So that's ridiculous what I just said.
It's summer for those Nordic countries. So.
Yeah.
So Noelle, I would say find a place where East meets West or North meets South, or, because I really want to get to Turkey, for example, before I go. Because it's definitely on my bucket list because of that very reason, because it's got so many cultures that went in and out of there. And even right now, I mean, what it's going through now politically, it is quite intriguing.
I love that.
And that's kind of what you did in your book, right? You weaved in and out of North and South and East and West. So it's an interesting read. Keep going, Kaylee. I'm sorry. I love that.
I love that. That's so true. And anyway, that's I could go off on that topic too. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, there's so many different perspectives, and that's why this discussion is so, I think, great, because it is really sort of all based on perspective. So maybe again, however many years down the line, we'll have another interview, and you can tell us, with the more places you've traveled to, that you might have that one specific place that you think people should visit. Who knows? So,
I love that. I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, you never know. And I feel that we have a concluding comment that I think is great to end the audience comment section, and it is from Christy, and she's saying this discussion isn't great just because she's the sister. She thinks this is great,
well,
but
thank you, Christy.
let's say that reading In Transit Passenger in small pieces to ponder the messages at the end of each chapter is a great advice that you said, Kathy. And she received an advanced copy of this book, and she believes this story will inspire many, especially in this time of COVID. So I felt that was a great comment to end with, because people are going to want to know where we can find you and where we can find the book. So I know Kathy will probably be asking that soon.
I will. Very next thing. And also, I mean, get your tickets ready, people.
Exactly.
So where can people eventually find your book? Through Touchpoint?
Well, it will be through Touchpoint. And what I've done is, Christy actually created the page for me, Robert Babirad Author, on Facebook. And that's the only social media I have at the moment. And what I've been doing is I've been putting up photos from all the different places that I actually went to in the book. And so it's kind of fun to see when the book actually does come out, to see in the book, to actually see these photos of the places that are mentioned. So,
oh, wow.
So I've been posting that regularly.
Oh, okay. I've seen some of them. It's really fun. So that's Robert, like spelled pretty normally, the American way. And Babirad is Babirad, and it's .com, right?
Babirad Author. So it's through Facebook, yes, but it's a public page, yes.
All right. Okay.
And that's amazing because my last name, it's brutal to try to spell that. So that was amazing.
I had a little experience previously, so.
Oh, God, sure.
So it's just been a real pleasure. Any final words, Robert?
I want to thank you and Kaylee for having me on today. I really enjoyed this so much. I'm so grateful to you both. And this is great. And I'm excited to see what people, especially people, their response to the passport questions. And how they...
Yeah, me too. Oh, please answer, please, please, please. and I wish you every good thing, both in your travels and in your writing. And thanks for being here with us. And to everybody else, I'm working on my first guest, which will be on the third Thursday. I'm going to be calling it Third Thursdays of January for my story hour, and a coaching hour on my Ground One Facebook page, which is completely new, on the second Thursday each month. We're firming, and that would be a great place to talk about schools. We're firming up our lineup for both as we speak, Kaylee and me, so stay tuned. And you can be involved, my listeners and readers, if you answer my survey. I posted it on this page yesterday. It'll help Kaylee and me plan for guests that you might want to hear instead of just guests that we want to talk to. So I call your attention to it. I posted it yesterday. It's the Google Docs. You just hit the link. And I thank you all for being here. You can find out more about me at shoresofourSouls.com and ground1coaching.com, and by following me on all my social media places, including Facebook. And I wish everyone a wonderful holiday season with a great book to read. May Santa bring you many, a whole library perhaps. And thanks again, Robert. Everybody take care.
Thank you so much, Kathy.